Views expressed are my own, or the opinions expressed here belong solely to me and do not reflect the views of my employer. My name is Chuck Banks, and you're listening to the Coaching Culture in Athletics Radio Broadcast Network affiliate, Dog Pound Radio, the Chuck Banks Experience. We are excited to bring you quality content here in Southeast Iowa. Or do you call it North Lee County, Iowa? We are excited to bring you live engagements of sporting events and, you know what, bringing in some political leaders and some avenues to make Fort Madison and North Lee County the best it can possibly be. Dog Pound Radio, the Chuck Banks Experience on the Coaching Culture and Athletics Radio Broadcast Network. If you'd like to be a guest on us, email us, coachingcultureandathletics@gmail.com. That's coachingcultureandathletics@gmail.com. We have one sponsor, and it is Stan Schmidt's Turn 2 Workshop. Check out his stuff today on Facebook. Never seen a man use his hands so vividly to bring quality products. We're looking for other sponsors. We're looking for other content. We love you. Relax, sit back, and enjoy the show. I want to welcome everybody. Happy Sunday. It is Sunday, September 21st, 2025. A couple days before my birthday. I'm going to be turning the big 5-3 this year. Excited about that. Today we're going to talk about several different things. We're going to have a couple different segments. I'm trying to set up my mic here so it's a little bit more comfortable. Hope everyone has had a great month of September so far. I mean, as a teacher, man, you blink and it's over. It's been pretty hectic, pretty crazy, especially in the special ed role and head coach role, that sort of stuff. And I want to give some shout outs, to some of my friends out there that are battling. I call them the teachers in the trenches. They're special friends too, right? They're battling out there, and I just want to send out happy well wishes, all that sort of stuff, and we got this. We're almost to October. It's crazy. Today I'm going to start out first. These are questions that I posed out there to varying people to ask questions on what kind of questions would they have for a former head coach. And here's a couple questions that came up. First off, what first inspired you to pursue coaching, and how did your journey begin? My journey in coaching began probably a lot like other parents, right? You become a parent. You start going to it's always starts with youth soccer, right? So you start hanging around youth soccer. Then it becomes softball. Then it becomes football, right? It's like a never-ending story. And I fell in love with the game of football, so to say. It would have been a couple years after I graduated, and I can remember, I wasn't very calm, right? I was standing, Paul Johnson Field. If you don't know where that's at, that's in Centerville, Iowa. I'm standing on the home side, and it's towards the end zone. It's got that little staircase where you march down. And I'm outside, sitting on the fence, just like 58 other couch coaches, right? And some bad calls, that takes place. I'm sitting there bitching and moaning, and you know what? Roger Campbell, my former AD. Well, not former AD. He was a history teacher when I was in high school. He was a football coach. He was a phenomenal football coach. He was actually an assistant to Darwin Christensen, which is kind of a Fort Madison tie, right? But he started out in Centerville, and I remember Roger coming over and said, instead of bitching about him, why don't you coach? I thought about it for a little bit, and then I kind of went back to my own little soapbox, so to say. But I love football. I love everything that football stands for. The ability to do something that is greater than yourself, right? It takes 11 people in unison doing remarkable things to have a remarkable outcome. And I had no clue, uh, about football, and I played it for a long time, right? But I had no clue. But that's it was kind of a gotcha moment. I can remember, I was working as a plant superintendent over in Leon, Iowa,
And the plant wasn't doing so good. It was after 9/11, and I kind of sat back and talked to the wife, talked to God a little bit, and I prayed on it, and I decided that it was time for me to go back to school. And so I worked at Iowa Steel and Wire there in Centerville, and I drove back and forth from Lamoni, Iowa, back and forth from Centerville each day until I graduated in 2 years. And I did that by taking 27 credit hours in one term because I wanted to be a teacher. But anyway, I wanted to coach football. That's what got me ultimately into this journey that started so long ago. Here's a question two. Looking back, what was your turning point in your career that shaped your philosophy as a coach? Well, you know, I've been on staffs. I've experienced or I've heard the horror stories as well from other coaches out there that they would yell at kids just to yell. They chastised them, made fun of them, that sort of thing, and that kind of bothered me as as a coach. I thought, you know what? When I finally become a head coach, I'm not going to act like that. I'm not going to be the old school, crazy lunatic on the sideline coach. And for whatever stretch of the imagination, I am kind of wild and animated on the sidelines, but I'm what you would call probably a player's coach. I love those guys, man. It's there's just something about it. But that pinnacle took place a couple different times. Um, I've got to stop this here. That pinnacle took I had a couple of moments. The obviously the first being that player's coach mentality in that role. And then I had a deal with a head coach, and this guy, you know what? I'll just say it. Jr. Randy Hoffman. Okay, Hoffman and I, we had a love hate relationship. He did some things that I didn't necessarily agree with, but sometimes as a activities director, the hand is ultimately played with a superintendent, and it was above my pay grade in many regards. But I swore that I would never ever, emulate physicality, like when he took his fingers and he poked them in my chest. So as a coach, I'm not going to be that guy. I just was not going to be that guy. So that was pinnacle two. So the third question that I got here from my listeners: who were your biggest influences or mentors in your coaching career? The biggest mentor that I ever had was a guy by the name of Russ Miller. Um, Centerville guys, they'll know who Russ Miller is. Russ was bigger than life. He was kind of the JV wrestling coach. He coached the O line for the Big Reds. I before he passed away, I was able to coach with him a couple years as well. But the biggest thing that Russ did is he loved you beyond the doors or the arena in which you played. And he took a great he just took a great liking to people in general, and he was just a glorious individual. So he was probably my biggest role in becoming involved. And then obviously the activities director, old Coach Campbell, man. It's one of those things. Leadership and philosophy, part two here. Let's talk about this as a former head coach. Here's the question: how did your coaching style evolve over the years? Well, I started out as a player's coach, and I feel that I've kind of evolved back into a player's coach. When I became a head football coach back in 2020, it was after all this COVID stuff and things that kind of hit the air. And I remember taking over that program, and I was kind of a mixture between, kind of that old school slash players coach philosophy. I believe in culture. I believe in that culture isn't necessarily just something that you're going to state. It's something that you did. It's something that you embodied. And that's why, as a former head coach, that's why I'm an assistant coach for the likes of Coach Derek Doherty, who lives and breathes that as well. Culture is not just what's written on the wall. It's something that we live. It's something that we embody. But I think the biggest thing, when I was a young coach, I was probably more sarcastic, um, probably harder to go up to ask questions. Whereas in my philosophy kind of switched that. You know what? I'm an open book. If you want to ask a question, I'm going to give you an honest answer. And sometimes those honest answers, aren't what people want to hear, but at the end of the day, it's something that I've really embodied over the years here to make sure that that all my student athletes understand that what I say is how I feel, and I believe in open communication and dialogue. I owe my players two things in life. Number one is to love them like my own and give them an opportunity to compete. That's going to wrap up part one. We'll be right back on the Chuck Banks Experience. The Chuck Banks Experience is brought to you by Turn 2 Workshop, Stan Schmidt. Be sure to check him out on Facebook and all that good sort of stuff. Check him out. Also, Dog Pound Radio, the Chuck Banks Experience. It's we're trying to bring you quality broadcast. It's a podcast that's pre-taped. We will do some live podcasts and activities in the future. But be sure to email us if you'd like to get on the Chuck Banks Experience, or you would like to, perhaps be a sponsor or something like that. But check out Stan Schmidt's Turn 2 Workshop on Facebook today. We'll be right back. And we're back for part two here, discussing some questions that I asked folks out there. You know what? If you wanted to ask a question to a former head coach, what kind of questions would you ask? And I'm giving kind of an honest insight. Some of these questions are deeply personal, and some of them are tough. So I appreciate my listeners for sending those out. If you have a question or any topic that you would want the Chuck Banks Experience to cover, you can email me, coachingcultureinathletics@gmail.com. That's coachingcultureinathletics@gmail.com. First and foremost, as I start segment two here, I want to give lots of prayers to Charlie Kirk's widow that stood up valiantly today and said that she forgave her husband's murderer. And as someone who's also a Christian, I want to say that that was valiant. It was unexpected, but it's what we do in Christ. So I kind of wanted to start out that. So back to these questions. So this topic was kind of the behind the scenes. So here's what it is, right? Uh, how did you handle the pressure of expectations from fans, administration, and the media? Well, looking back, probably not so well. You know, um, there were several instances when I was head coach that I felt that that things were kind of behind the scenes out of my control. As a head coach, I'm not going to state that this is a rebuilding season because every game's a damn determination to win, right? Well, it took me a couple years, and it took two 0-8 seasons before we finally actually won a game, let alone made the playoffs. To be able to handle that pressure and expectations, but when you're brought into a head coaching situation and you give your heart and soul, man, you're working hours upon hours. The stress is unreal. The only thing that got me through it was basically my wife, right? My family, and your friends or your so-called friends, right? But anyway, there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure to win, and at the end of the day, when when I was able to tell my team, they can't take this away from you. When we were getting our state playoff, banner, I teared up. I kind of saw the writing on the wall though. Anytime you go 3-22 in 3 seasons, even when you make the playoffs, you're probably, you know what I mean. People are going to bid adieu, especially if you're in a, what I would call a toxic work environment. And anyway, I'm not going to poke names or point fingers or anything like that. But it was tough. It was extremely tough. But that's kind of all I'll say with that. But I aged a few years. Thank goodness for becoming a bloodhound, um, coming on Coach Doherty's staff, and still being able to be a part of football. That's truly what it's all about. I did get a question one time. Would you rather be an assistant coach on an elite football program or a head coach at a weaker program? And I've had the opportunity to do both of those. And I'll tell you, it's about the kids. It's about the development of young men that are young women, in some of the other sports that I coach. It's about taking them past their comfort level. It's about leading by example. That's truly what it's all about, right? So anyway, another question from behind the scenes. What's something about being a head coach that people on the outside rarely see or understand? They rarely or see or understand that coaches take it personally. And I know that there's people out there that says, "Man, why do you take things so personally?" It's because you're the head of the program. It's because people don't see how many hours you're working. People don't see how many text messages, voicemails, emails that you get in a 24-hour time period. They don't see the tears, the frustration. They don't see that, the sarcasm and the remarks when you're trying to communicate with your lovely family at home. They don't see that. They don't see that you taking everything so personally. Um, yeah, it's the being a head high school football coach is one of the things that, I mean, it's like this, right? You have 13, 14, 15, basically 13 through 18-year-olds are controlling your future, and you're trying to develop them again to be something greater than what they can see for themselves. And people don't see that. People don't see that on the outside. I appreciate that question, by the way. Question again. This one's kind of along the behind the scenes as well. Can you share a time, let's see, when you had to make a really tough decision that still sticks with you today? Yes. I remember basically my leader of the school had made a statement that I wouldn't have my son play for this junior high coach. And we ended up letting him go. And you know what? Looking back, um, that hurt. Well, I wouldn't I as an older coach here, as someone that's been through it, I would never ever do that again. Period. So it is what it is. Adversity and growth. This is the next segment of the questions that came in this week. Number one, how did you approach failure or tough seasons? I don't think there's ever a failure when you're a head coach or you're a coach in general. I think that far too often we see um, not winning as a failure, or a kid getting injured as a failure. I mean, all of these in I don't know, all of these aspects definitely flowed in. And as someone that's been a part of two straight winless seasons, back when I was a head coach, and something even as an assistant I've dealt with a few times in my career. And I'll tell you how you deal with it is sometimes you got to hold your head up a little bit. You're always searching for answers, right, and clarity. But I think the biggest thing that ended up helping me is I started to pray to God and let go of things. And those things can, and you got to see the wins within the losses. And I know people are so black and white. If you hear those hound dogs, they're rolling in the background. But anyway, um, yeah, I'll be right back. I got to go check on those hound dogs. I'll be right back on the Chuck Banks Experience. You're listening to the Chuck Banks Experience on the Coaching Culture in Athletics Radio Broadcast Network. So I'm back here after the dogs, obviously upstairs. Those that don't know, I have two beagles. This is Dog Pound Radio. And the mascot of my school I currently work with is a hound. Anyway, adversity and growth part two. Question number two. If I sound out of breath, I am a little bit, right? What was the biggest challenge you faced as a head coach and how did you overcome it? COVID. I remember we were in a Donnybrook of a game and we probably didn't make the first down, but I thought we did. Okay, it was week 1, 2020, and we lost that game by 3 points. And it kind of set the tone for the season. Shortly after that game, I remember my wife got really seriously ill from COVID, was in the hospital, nearly took her from us, and we all had COVID. So I was out 2 weeks with this team, and it was just kind of back and forth. We didn't know who we were going to have each and every game. And so COVID was probably the biggest challenge that I faced as a coach. And I can remember wiping down everything. Coaches out there, they kind of, they'll probably chagrin that stuff, but we had to wipe everything down. Everybody had to wear masks on the bus. It was freaking crazy. Yeah, COVID. Another adversity and growth. What's something you learned from your players instead of the other way around? Well, I had a couple of players that when I was kind of running rough. My faith wasn't very good. I wasn't a great husband. I wasn't a great person for a couple years, and when your players lead by example and they bring you back to Christ, it's amazing. So that's kind of one that we'll look at now. Life after coaching. Thank goodness I'm still coaching to this point. At this point in my career, with health issues and all that sort of stuff, who knows how much longer I will be on the coaching ranks. But I can tell you this, each and every day, it's an opportunity to have a few more minutes left instead of, trying to wish my life away. I'll tell you that. What do you miss most and the least about being a head coach? What I missed most is running the offense that I liked and the defense that I liked and kind of the control of personnel and stuff like that. I kind of enjoyed that, the chess game about where you're going to move somebody on a defensive Friday night and things like that. So that was kind of my, that's what I missed the most. As far as what I missed the least is always being kind of front and center. Having to take criticism from somebody that doesn't sit at your dinner table, stuff like that. The subtle digs on social media. The people throwing Gatorade bottles from the sideline trying to hit your assistant coach. Those are just a few. Or shortly after you get beat on a game by 2 points, and you have someone, you have a parent in the stands that is, that confronts you directly after the game, and he's got fingers in there. Why didn't you kick? Why didn't you kick? But doesn't understand the damn game and how 3 of your damn kickers gets hurt that evening. And by the way, that's going to be a 42-yard field goal for someone that hasn't kicked, hasn't practiced. That's what I miss the least. I love the kids. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot that I could care less about doing that. I have people that ask me all the time, Coach Banks, are you gonna ever have the fervor to be a head coach again? No, not no, not at this point in my life anyway. It's God takes you where you need to be anyway. Period. Right. So anyway, that was a great question. I'm telling you. Okay, so life after coaching. If you could go back, would you do anything differently in your career? No. It took me a long time to be a head coach. nearly 18 years in, and finally took over a program and got to make the playoffs in my own light. That's exciting. I wouldn't do anything over again. Um, it's just one of those things. Advice and legacy. I love this. This is from a former player of mine who has three questions, and we'll dig into them here. Number one, what advice would you give to young coaches just starting out? Be patient. Create a list of pros and cons from coaches that you've had, the experiences, and try to create a philosophy where you're going to be a sponge, and you're going to take criticism from your staff, and they're going to develop you into a great coach. I think I'm a better assistant coach now that I've been a head coach. Um, leave here's the biggest thing, right? You got to leave ego at the door. If you're a young coach, leave ego at the door. Be a servant. Servant leadership is what I would give as far as advice. Question two, how did you want to be remembered by your players and peers? Well, people that know me know that Coach Banks is a character, right? There's a lot of people out there that probably still have Banksisms. I know Coach Paloma over there in Centerville. They're having a great season, by the way. I'll throw that out there. I'm a character, but I want to be remembered that I went above and beyond, that I cared about my kids, my student athletes, beyond the classroom, beyond the field of competition. That I just want my legacy to be that I made a difference in the lives of kids. That's the biggest thing. Final question from this young man. If you could summarize your coaching career in one word, what would it be? Beautiful. I'm here to tell you that it has been a beautiful ride. I'm still coaching, by the way. I'm still kicking. Uh, being around all my student athletes over the years have had such an impact on me personally. uh, and I'll hold each and every one of those student athletes. They're still all my kids. Even if I do dislike some of the management in certain school districts, cough cough, but still love them all. Um, that one kind of that one kind of that one kind of cut there, and I think the biggest thing looking back, as a coach, and all the things that I've gone through in my entire life uh, is the former players when they send you that message when you're down and out, and you think things are bleak, right? And anyway, I want to send nothing but prayers and good comfort to everybody in the coaching realm, because you spend more hours with kids, and you have more impacts with kids, and you make more decisions with kids than anybody on the outside ever truly knows, right? Biggest advice that I can give to all my head coaches out there, especially my coach Doherty, you know, best friend, one of the best friends on the planet. And I would take our coaching staff over a lot of people, man. I just would. The biggest piece of advice that I could give to anybody is don't take advice from people that don't sit around your table, or that don't break bread at your table. Hope everyone has an amazing week. We can't end not with a verse, right? So I'm trying to dig this up here. Give me just a few moments. If you would like to be a guest on the Chuck Banks Experience, email me, coachingcultureandathletics@gmail.com. That's coachingcultureandathletics@gmail.com. Be on the lookout for Dog Pound Radio firing back up as we get closer to winter. And you know that Chuck will be on the dish for wrestling here in Southeast Iowa. I'm going to finish today with Luke 16:10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. That one kind of hits me a little bit. Be honest, be humble, pray for people, love one another, and for God's sakes, be good to each other. We're out.